So a rare treat with this second world premiere, we actually have the composer here. And instead of having this program notes that you may or may not read in dimly lit environments, I'm going to ask him to actually tell you about this work and a bit about its conception. So would you please welcome composer James Seiler.
Thank you. Years ago when I decided to go into music, one of the reasons I went into music was so I didn't have to talk. And now when I go, I have to talk. So it's a little awkward because all that talking about something, an idea, is what you kind of funnel into the music. So here's what I thought I would outline for you. This is a large piece, so be comfortable. It takes about 30 minutes. It's in 6 sections. So when I was asked to do this about Mr. and Mrs. Alston, I had to find a way to, it wasn't a prescribed form. It's not a requiem, it's not a cantata, it's something in between, but it's a piece of remembrance. So I wrote a set of words, and they kind of fell into the format that's in your program. The first one deals with the land. The Alstons grew up on tobacco farms. They know what hard work is. The land, if any of you have worked it or come from it or grew up in the country, it can be, on the one hand, inspiring and sometimes, on the other hand, haunting. The land is a special thing. We return to the land. So the first movement is, I would say, somewhere in between mysterious and haunting. The second movement is just old-fashioned work. And the music for work, at least I thought, was mechanized and rhythmic and repetitive. So 2 is all about the repetitive nature of work. 3 is a challenging one. There are subjects that sometimes people don't like to deal with. There are histories of different people that sometimes don't get talked about. My responsibility as an artist is to talk about them. 3 deals with the racial violence of the past and the present. It deals with a series of questions, why we cannot fix the problems we seem to have. And lastly, when is it worth fighting for to fix things? 4 is nostalgic. 4 is a boy on a porch listening to the grown-ups talk in the summer. And it has, like the opening movement, an element of mystery and haunting. The 5th movement is an old-fashioned spiritual. Original, I wrote it. It's not an existing piece, but it's very simple. And then the 6th movement is essentially a hymn tune, a homegoing. So this is an unusual piece for me. It's unusual, I think, to listen to. It's part organ music, part chamber music, part choral music, part spoken word, part narrator. You will hear a recorded narrator coming through the house, and that person is a kind of third person omniscient narrator. So I think that's all I have to say about it. I hope you enjoy it. And of course, this is all under the inspiration of the Alstons. Thank you. I want to tell you a story inspired by two people in the twilight of life. I've known them for a long time, actually since they were born. And I know many of you too. They grew up on farms, not far from each other. They married, built a family, and lived a long life. She had a gift for music, and he became a success in business. Both were lifelong workers for what is right. There were many times I had to get them out of trouble. I'm not who you think I am, but we'll get to that later. Artists know it as the golden hour, a time of day when the sun is sinking and the light turns golden. A sacred time for remembering and knowing. Our first story is about where you come from. The land is where you begin. It's also where part of you will return. I wonder how many understand life while they live it. The old play said, saints and poets maybe, they do some. The light has turned golden now, and I must go.
There is a time of day when the light is right and the winds blow and the river flows, scattering those who went before me. A time to remember, a time for knowing. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. On certain days I could hear it, a breathing river under the fields returning to the source. When I was young, I only knew what I could see, and even though I left long ago, this is what remained. I always wondered if I would return. If I do, and I hear it again, I'll know this place never belonged to anyone, because sounds become songs, and songs are eternal like fields, never bought or sold, and I too am eternal. There is blood on the leaves here, and blood in the fields, and blood that runs under the fields, and it all sings, flowing to a day of reckoning. There is a time of day when the light is right, and the winds blow, and the river flows, scattering those who went before me. A time to remember, a time for knowing. Ashes to ashes,
Is hard work a gift? Maybe the desire to work is the gift. If so, they were gifted. They knew what hard work was, the kind that can surprise you, exhaust you, and make you wonder, why bother? They had a certain kind of grit. They learned it when they were young. I remember. Through the years, it would help them know when to fight, especially for what was right. They were driven by the word never, and it made me smile over and over again.
Grit, rapture, big, bad, bold and bright, brave, firm, slamming, jamming, slogging, moving, chasing light, backbone, hitching toe, tug, drag, fighting might, leaning forward, full of power, never falling in the night. Stamina, energy, powerful rigor, spunky and moxie, and working for dinner, spirit and gutsiness, passion and vigor, rocking and rolling and just getting bigger. Never ending, never failing, never yielding, always running, never folding, never shrinking, never stopping, always hopping, never flopping, never boring, never airing, always soaring, never sleeping in the morning, never sitting, always roaring. Stamina, energy, powerful rigor, spunky and moxie and working for dinner, spirit and gutsiness, passion and vigor, rocking and rolling and just getting bigger. Never losing, never boozing, never balling, never falling, never lying, never sighing, never sinking, never blinking, never one to ever quit, never one to ever quit, never running out of grit, never running out of grit.
There was a time when that grit was needed for things that really mattered, for things worth fighting for, when people had grown used to the way things were, not the way they could be. Much has changed, yet there is still so much to do. Certainly keeps me busy. On Sunday they would hear, "Love your enemies. Turn the other cheek." Easy to say on Sunday, but so hard to do on Monday. They had many questions, but they were there when I needed them. I was told to make sure of that. Will you be there as a light for what is right? What is worth fighting for?
John Punch, 1640. Bacon's Rebellion, 1676. Code Noir, 1685. New York Slave Revolt, 1712. Stono Rebellion, 1739. Fugitive Slave Act, 1793. Nat Turner, 1800. William Lloyd Garrison, 1814. Cincinnati, 1829. 5 Points, 1834. St. Louis, 1854. New Orleans, 1866. Seattle, 1886. Wilmington, 1898. Atlanta, 1906. Houston, 1917. Ocoee, 1920. Tulsa, 1921. Rosewood, 1923. Scottsboro, 1931. Harlem, 1935. Beaumont, 1943. Cicero, 1954. Philadelphia, 1964. Bloody Sunday, 1965. Asbury Park, 1970. Overtown, Liberty City, 1989. Rodney King, 1992. Cincinnati, 2001. Ferguson, 2014. Mother Emanuel Church, 2015. Charlotte, 2016. George Floyd, 2020. And somewhere tomorrow. And the next day. And the next day. And the next day. How do you right a wrong? How do you shine light into old places? How do you fight for equality when inequality is written into the law? How do you bring people together when they've never known how? How do you tell a family, you can't buy a house in this neighborhood? How do you tell a father, he has to explain to his son, this is what you do if you get pulled over? How do you tell a mother on her way to work, you have to sit in the back? How do you tell a child, all men are created equal, then send them to a separate school? How do you bless those who curse you when the sign says, no Negroes, no Jews, no Indians, no immigrants, no Chinese, no Irish, no Mexicans, no Catholics, no Japs, no colored, no dogs? How do you do good to those who hate you when a boy is abducted, stripped, beaten, his eye gouged out, shot in the head and dumped in a river like yesterday's trash, only because someone told a lie? How do you love your enemies? When a man steps onto his balcony in the light of day and a bullet from across the street rips through his cheek, goes down his spine, his head jerks back, his jaw is shattered and there's blood everywhere. And the hope of a generation and generations before you is snuffed out. In the blink of an eye, how long until justice rolls down like water? How long until we all say enough? What is worth fighting for?
Your memories can be unforgiving, like stone. How you remember can make a difference. Anger and hate can haunt you, but so can hope and joy. This story is about a child who remembers a warm summer night. They may not understand all the details, but they are listening. Listening to people older and larger, and remembering with their eyes and ears things they will only understand later. Sometimes my orders are to make things happen, and telling stories and remembering has become my best method. And remembering the good seems to work best at night, when the breeze is warm in the summer.
kitchen was put away, I would sit outside in an old chair. Our house was not big, but big enough, and maybe the best part was the porch. Wide, wooden, and worn, it was where grown-ups would talk, and I would listen. There were stories, and they were long. There was silence, and it was long too. And I'm certain there were ghosts perched on the railing. Some seemed good, and some not, like the kind that wake you up at night in the summer. The trees are tall like my father, and they sway gently in the breeze. The wind is warm like my mother, who looks at me the way mothers do. I am young, but I know there is more to do and more to come, and it will be good. For now, I am sleepy and taken to bed, where I drift away in the summer. It's been many years, and the stories have been mostly forgotten. The ghosts on the railing are gone, and their power with them. The tall trees have fallen, along with the blood on their leaves. Some of the winds have gone cold, and I wonder. I'm haunted at night when I sit outside in an old chair on the porch, and a distant tree stands tall and strong, and it watches me. And sometimes I hear them both at night in the summer.
There is a time for quiet, to consider where you've been. A time for sitting, not working. A time for knowing, not telling. I love the quiet, late in the day, when the light is right and the breeze is warm. I made sure they were listening for the river that runs under the fields. They would sit together, watching and waiting. And I knew their time was near, and they did too. They're gone now, but not really. When the time was right, I led them myself through the valley. One was quick, the other slower. And yes, it is very dark, but I was there. The Reverend said, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that." And he was right. You're born, you die, and in the middle you do your best to understand. There is a hope, there is a light, but feeling it is much different than seeing it. And trusting is much different than knowing. It can take time, and the emptiness can take time too. You will always have what you remember, and it can be very good. And the joy it brings can be good too. And maybe most of all, they were good. They were given a peace that's hard to understand. It came late in the day, in the golden hour, when the light was just right, and the breeze was warm, and it was good, and it will be good, and it is good.